Imagine, if you can, trying to live your entire life having a superpower, but being completely oblivious to it, until one day, your entire world changes, along with the understanding of science as we know it. Well, this is in fact exactly what happened to one Scottish nurse, Joy Milne, in April of 2012, when she was attending a press conference on stem cell research by Thilo Kunath, a Parkinson's researcher at the University of Edinburgh. The woman telling the researcher that miraculously, she believed that she had the ability to smell Parkinson's in other human beings. Hello, my name is Finn. Today, I would like to tell you all a story. The real-life story of a woman whose unbelievable superpower changed science as we know it. Join me once again as we step into the void. Now you see, the researcher Thilo Kunath was obviously skeptical at first when approached by this woman, as who could believe that Parkinson's, let alone any other neurodegenerative condition, could have some sort of odor. And honestly, who could really blame him for thinking this? Joy herself was skeptical at first, and she likely would have never even discovered her strange ability, her superpower if you will, if it wasn't for the love of her life, her husband, Les. You see, Joy, for all of her life since she was a little girl, had what we might describe as a sensitive nose, an ability to pick up on certain smells around her that others seemingly couldn't detect, from foods to animals, even humans. Joy recalls the first time she met her husband Les when they were just high schoolers. She remembers dancing with him at a party, the woman she recalled being struck by his, and I quote, wonderful smell. From here, the two would begin dating. A few short years later, after college in their early 20s, they would be married, both pursuing work in the field of medicine, Joy as a nurse, Les as a doctor. Joy and Les, by all accounts, had a happy, picturesque marriage, having 3 children, 3 sons, Joy describing her husband as everything that she had ever hoped for in a partner. However, one day, about 10 years into their marriage, something began to change. Les came home from work at the hospital that day, but Joy noticed something was odd about him. His smell was different. Weeks and months would pass, and this strange new spell that permeated on her husband began to grow stronger and stronger. In Joy's own words, it was a nasty sort of yeasty, musky smell. She would regularly tell him to go and clean up and try to wash this smell off, but no matter what he did, the smell seemingly remained, only getting stronger and only detectable by Joy. Over time, Les began to grow annoyed by his wife's constant nagging about this smell, as to him, he smelled no different. He couldn't tell exactly what his wife was talking about. Yet to Joy, it was so overwhelming, it was so permeating and so different, and worst of all, it only continued to grow stronger. Years would pass, and Joy soon began to realize that it wasn't just her husband's smell that was seemingly changing. It was the man himself. The once ever patient and affable man began to grow moody, less tolerant. The couple began to fight more and more often, their picturesque marriage slowly fracturing at the seams. In Joy's own words, by the time they reached their early 40s, the man that she had fallen in love with now seemed like a completely different person. This ultimately would culminate one night when Joy awoke in complete panic and terror as her husband was attacking her. The man was screaming incoherently, shaking Joy in their bed, but something was wrong. Aside from the fact that her husband was attacking her, Joy realized that her husband had seemingly no idea what was going on. His eyes were hazy, almost glazed over. The man was completely unaware of what he was doing, almost as if he was dreaming. This, though, was the kind of final straw in the divulging of the marriage between this couple. Joy was convinced that something was seriously wrong with her husband. Terrified that he might have a brain tumor or something worse, she decided to schedule him a doctor's appointment, where it was revealed to them that no, this was in fact not a brain tumor. Les had Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's being a progressive neurological disorder of the nervous system that has no known cure. Over the next 20 years, the couple would try to make the best of their new situation, but life had grown difficult for Les. As the disease progressed, the man began to lose more and more mobility, more and more motor functions. He was no longer able to work, and now relied completely on his wife to take care of him. As things in their life and their relationship began to grow more and more difficult, Joy decided that they should attend a type of support group for people suffering with Parkinson's to try to find others that could relate and share their experiences that were similar to their own. Here, though, is where Joy's life would completely change forever. As the two walked into the room, something hit Joy like a truck. It was the smell. That same greasy, musty, yeasty-like smell, a smell that she had now come to associate with her husband, was radiating from all corners of the room, from every single person there who was diagnosed with Parkinson's. While the smell was relatively stronger on some and weaker on others, it still was very much there, that same ever-permeating smell that she had come to associate with the change in her husband. It was here that Joy wondered for the very first time, could Parkinson's disease have a smell? On the drive home, she would confide this thought to her husband. Now, we have to remember that both of them worked in the medical field. They were rational people of science. And this realization suddenly dawned on Les of just how potentially important this scientific discovery could be if they had proof, as they realized that they should reach out to an expert. Enter Tilo Kunath, the Parkinson's researcher at the University of Edinburgh that was introduced at the beginning of our story. At first, the man completely dismissed this idea. I mean, Parkinson's having a smell, it didn't make any sense. There was no scientific evidence that any neurodegenerative disease up at this point could possibly have a smell, and why would it? Kunath told the couple that he wasn't interested in studying their claim, and let's be honest, though he didn't say it, he probably thought that they were a bit batshit crazy. However, this all changed for Kunath just a few months later, when he stumbled upon a study emerging that began to show that it was possible for dogs to smell cancer. As Kunath read this research paper, his mind began to drift back to the couple he had met months prior, and their strange, illogical, seemingly impossible claim. Kunath, now very much intrigued, managed to track Joy down, and he contacted her and brought her into his lab so they could perform some experiments. This experiment is relatively a simple one. Kunath assembled two groups of people and asked them each to wear a white shirt overnight when they went to sleep. One group of people wasn't diagnosed with Parkinson's, the other was. The shirts were then brought back into the lab and randomized and labeled with a variety of numbers. They were then given to Joy and she was asked to smell them, and then score the shirts based on if the person did or did not have Parkinson's and to what stage the disease would be. And to Kunath and the rest of the science community complete and utter shock, Joy was surprisingly accurate. In fact, throughout every single shirt, she only made one mistake, where she identified a man in the control group as having Parkinson's. Now, this alone is a pretty shockingly, statistically significant study, as if she only got one wrong amongst every single shirt that she tested, this would lead at least some evidence to suggest that it was possible that Parkinson's has a smell. But things got even crazier when this same man would approach Kunath months later, telling him that he had recently been diagnosed with Parkinson's. Joy not only had been right that the man had Parkinson's, that she had smelled it on him, but she had been able to detect it in its early stages before he was even diagnosed. Kunath and his fellow scientists would publish the results in March 2019, as they now had scientific evidence that Parkinson's had a potential detectable smell, and somehow Joy, a human being, was able to detect that smell. Joy, wanting to help people who suffered from the same disease that her husband does, dedicated her life to using her newfound superpowers for good. Les would spend the last 6 weeks of his life with Joy in daily writing sessions, remembering everything that happened in the years prior to his diagnosis, trying to pinpoint early symptoms of the disease that potentially science hasn't identified. Joy said in an interview that the last thing Les said to her before he ultimately would pass was about Joy's superhuman gift. Les would ask his wife to promise to continue to work towards helping science better understand Parkinson's, a promise that she has kept to this day. And so ends the story of Joy and Les, a story of love and loss, yet hope for the future. The story of a woman whose superhuman, inhuman gift of smell left scientists completely shocked and in disbelief at what it seems like humans are actually really capable of.
It's horrible watching your partner change like that. It really is. If we get the test right, they will never get to that stage, because at that stage of diagnosis, 60 to 70% of damage, neural damage, is already done. You're not going to find a cure at the moment, it's not there, but to stop or alleviate it is just going to be tremendous.
As always, friends, thank you all for watching. If you did enjoy this video, then please make sure you like, comment, and subscribe, as your engagement on the video really does help in putting it into the algorithm. Thank you once again for watching, and as always, I hope to see you next time when once again we step into the void.